Kagaya po ng nasabi ko na kahapon, Mr. President, wala po tayong extradition treaty sa ICC. At wala na po tayong membership sa Rome Statute sapagkat nag-withdraw na po tayo. Sa makatwid, wala na pong treaty. Yun po ay nakasaad sa Article 17 ng 9851. Second, at the United Nations, the Philippine government, through the permanent representative, pronounced that the state policy under RA 9851, Philippine courts have the exclusive jurisdiction over crimes against humanity. It also declared that Philippine courts have the competence and capacity to try and decide these cases. Kung ganun po pala, this is the national policy already articulated even before the halls of the United Nations. Bakit pinipilit pa natin na iserve ang isang warrant of arrest na hindi na natin kinikilala ang jurisdiction ng lintik na ICC na yan? Hence, the Philippine state policy is to assert and exercise local jurisdiction rather than recognize foreign jurisdiction such as that of the ICC. Third, the Philippine government has assumed and exercised local jurisdiction under RA 9851 over the crimes arising from extrajudicial killings allegedly committed by Senator Dela Rosa. Philippine local jurisdiction already set in when Senator Dela Rosa was served a subpoena by the CIDG in connection with its investigation of said extrajudicial killings. Senator Dela Rosa has stated that he is ready to respond to the subpoena. It is of no moment, Mr. President, that today the CIDG withdrew the subpoena. It is a legal ruse. It's a legal legerdemain. Ang akala nila kung withdraw nila yung subpoena, wini-withdraw na yung case. No, Mr. President, the case is kicking and alive. It triggered already the jurisdiction of our National Prosecution Service and eventually the courts of this country. The crimes under investigation by the CIDG are the same crimes for which the ICC has issued a warrant, Mr. President. Under the principle of complementarity, said ICC arrest warrants can no longer be enforced because there is now a genuine domestic investigation and prosecution currently taking place in this country. The assumption of jurisdiction by Philippines over the acts attributed to Senator Dela Rosa and the person of Senator Dela Rosa automatically and absolutely bar the ICC from exercising jurisdiction over the same acts and on his person. These circumstances, and by reason of the principle of complementarity and the Rome Statute, strip the ICC, Mr. President, of its jurisdiction. Therefore, given that the sponsors themselves admit that under Republic Act number 9851, Philippine courts have exclusive original jurisdiction over the crimes for which the ICC has issued an arrest warrant against Senator Dela Rosa, given that the Philippines have assumed jurisdiction over said crimes when it served the subpoena on Senator Dela Rosa, and given that Senator Dela Rosa will respond to the subpoena, said sponsors cannot but agree that the ICC warrant of arrest should not be enforced on the good senator. It should be borne in mind, Mr. President, that the protective custody granted to Senator Dela Rosa is for the sole purpose of ensuring the following. First, that only Philippine warrant of arrest, not an ICC warrant of arrest, will be enforced against him. Second, upon service of Philippine arrest warrant, he shall enjoy all the rights and privileges granted by the Constitution and the laws of the Philippines. Third, that he can avail of all Philippine administrative and judicial remedies and processes. Fourth, he shall remain in Philippine territory where he can exhaust all said administrative and judicial remedies and processes. And finally, and most important of all, the jurisdiction that the Philippines has assumed over his alleged crimes under R. 9851 must be exercised to the total exclusion of the ICC. Finally, Mr. President, the sponsors of Senate Resolution number 395 question the constitutional and statutory basis of the resolution granting Dela Rosa, Senator Dela Rosa, the protective custody of the Senate. These purposes, Mr. President, are legitimate. They do not contravene any Philippine law. In fact, they ensure that the Philippine laws are respected and enforced in Philippine territory to the exclusion of the Rome Statute that the Philippines no longer recognize by reason of its withdrawal therefrom. The protective custody granted to Senator Dela Rosa addresses not only an extraordinary threat to his liberty, but also an existential threat to the integrity of the Philippine Senate, and by extension, a grave peril to the independence of the Republic itself from foreign interference. It is a threat emanating from a source that the Philippine Constitution laws did not anticipate. A foreign entity, Mr. President, the ICC, which jurisdiction is not only questionable but also lost due to the Philippines' withdrawal from the Rome Statute. The protective custody addresses a threat whose profound ramifications include regime change and outright interference in the sovereign affairs of the Philippines. To give inroads to the ICC is to enable it to structurally alter the Philippine Senate and disenfranchise Filipino voters for the arrested senator will be rendered futile, whose votes for the arrested senator will be rendered futile and meaningless. The ICC will transform Philippine agencies as its own puppet and tools and hold hostage Philippine officials, civilian and military, against whom it can initiate prosecution anytime and in perpetuity. The Senate's custodial protection is born out of self-preservation, which is the first law of nature for both men and institution, Mr. President. The Philippine Senate has granted custodial protection to witnesses in order to ensure the continuity and integrity of its legislative hearings. It is with more reason that it can and should grant custodial protection to its members to enable them to discharge their mandate unmolested by a foreign entity like the ICC and its local tentacles and subalterns. The Philippine Senate and its members enjoy privileges and immunities under the Constitution and laws so that they may discharge their functions effectively, efficiently. Specific privileges and immunities were designed to address the usual disruption to these functions. However, they did not anticipate disruptions from a foreign source. Thus, a purposive interpretation of the Constitution and laws is necessary in order for the Philippine Senate to meet new forms and sources of challenges. For this reason, Mr. President, it adopted Resolution Number 44 and implemented the same with respect to Senator De La Rosa. The Philippine Supreme Court did not also see it coming. It has to do its job and rise to the occasion, Mr. President. In the end, the dignity and integrity of the person of Senator De La Rosa, as well as of any member of the Senate, including the sponsors, represent the dignity and integrity of the institution of the Philippine Senate vis-a-vis foreign interference. Resolution number 395 will weaken its dignity and in the process destroy its integrity as an institution that stands as the last bastion of democracy. Dapat lamang na ibasura ang Resolution number 395. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo.
Former Senate President, Minority Leader Senator Soto is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. President, parliamentary inquiry.